Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and today we're going to be reviewing The Guardians of Tradition, The Mass of the Ages, Episode 3. And with me today, I have the Supreme Puntiff himself. What the hell is wrong with me? Jeff. Jeff, welcome back to the show. I can't say himself today, apparently.
No worries. I can't say a lot of things, and that's all right. But I'm really glad you're having me back on, and I'm excited to talk about this movie that just came out.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I mean, I enjoyed the fact that th- um you know we both got the opportunity to see it in the theater.
Hmm.
We'll talk a little bit about that, but few people, I would say, have that opportunity,
Hmm.
and it's really awesome that we were able to do that.
Yeah, I think my wife said that there's only like six premieres that were happening across the country. So, and also to have the executives within Mass of the Ages present for those. And it obviously took local support to make these things happen, especially for free tickets and all. Um, it's a very special thing, and I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity to go in person.
Well, they truly are men of the people. I don't think of these people like Hollywood people. They're not disconnected with the people. Oh, and
Yeah,
Margot's unhappy already.
good, good. That
But
lets me
yeah,
know I'm doing my job.
but yes, they're I mean, Cameron, uh Dan, like, these people are not, you know, I don't know. They're not part of the Hollywood machine at all. This is a external thing that's going on, and it's really
Yes.
great because it's storytelling in a way. The fact that it's disconnected and it's storytelling is amazing because Hollywood has had a stranglehold on all these types of things for so long,
Hmm.
and their Mass of the Ages is really using the medium of YouTube and other platforms to go around the system, I guess.
Yeah, and it really speaks a lot that none of this, like, they have a nonprofit that they're running everything through, and they aren't charging to see, so they are donation driven. And it was free tickets for my wife and I and my father-in-law to get to go see it live. So they're not in it for money; they're in it because they have a passion for this. And you can really just I was able to see that a lot in just talking with the two gentlemen, Dan and Cameron,
Also,
which
not to mention, you said that they're not, they're not in it for the money, but the amazing thing is they get the money necessary
mm,
in order to make these, which shows that they're basically at the mercy of basically the audience.
yeah, and I'd say not even just the mercy of, but the generosity of, because and this is something that I had to learn plenty of when I was a focus missionary. I had to fundraise my salary. But at the end of the day, when there is good work that's being done and you're the only one that can do it, I think it's Luke 10:10, the laborer is worth his wages. What they're doing is well worthy of it. And the fact that they're able to find that support through donations rather than having to just go through purely money making scheme really speaks to just how important it is what they're doing, and that there is that popular support for this. It's not just a few people mega funding it. This is a lot of people, even those that don't attend the traditional Latin mass, but see the need for it, and see I just the need for the truth to be told about how we've arrived at the current state in the church. um, that's at least my opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, well said. Now, I've seen some people talk about the themes or the messaging
Hmm.
of the latest episode, and I have to disagree on I think it was Trevor basically said that it wasn't for those who attend the traditional Latin mass. Well, I think that's partially true, but I think it's sort of, in some sense, sending two messages at once.
Hmm.
To those who are already in the like going to traditional Latin masses, it's sending the message of hope. It's sending,
Hmm.
like, it's saying, don't jump off the boat. And
Hmm.
that seems to me, after, because I rewatched it today, after seeing it, was it last Saturday or the Saturday before? I can't remember, but
Hmm.
it had been a while, and it struck me that it's not just it's not just for newcomers. It's, the church is still the church, and it's not time, you don't want to jump off of uh sort of the boat and into the seas, at the just as the apostles, stayed on the boat,
Hmm.
uh when during the storm, and Jesus calmed the storm later, and basically said, "Why were you worried? I was with you."
Hmm.
And then I do think the message to people that are not within the traditional Latin Mass parishes or communities, I think the message for them was, this is where sort of injustice lies on what the Holy See
Hmm.
is doing to your fellow Catholics. Like,
Yeah, yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that. I do think Trevor is right in one respect, that of the three um, episodes within this trilogy, I think this is the perfect one to show those who are not currently attending the Latin Mass. And just to give you like a little bit of backstory for this, my father-in-law is somebody that I greatly respect. I've seen him growing deeper in his faith over these last, especially 8 years since I got married to his beautiful daughter. And he grew up in the traditional Latin Mass, but really his formative teenage years were spent in the Novus Ordo. And whenever he comes out here, like he'll still just attend the local Novus Ordo parish down the street rather than actually coming with us to Mass at our FSSP parish. But we were able to bring him along for the movie, and he was blown away by it. The main things that he said that like have stuck with me were, first, that this absolutely piqued his interest and he wants to go back and watch the first two. He then said that he um, wanted to show this to everyone in his Bible study. And then lastly, he's like, if nothing else, just being here tonight and seeing everything that you're putting into supporting this, there's nothing like else in the church that like speaks as clearly that there is need for support. Like there's something there, is what he said basically. Like there's something that's driving you to support this, to support the mission of Mass of the Ages, to support the traditional liturgy. Like there's something there, even if I don't experience it and I don't care to particularly go to it. Um, you know, he he's very active in his parish, and uh, with the representative to the synodality, like I don't know the specific structure, but when that representative comes back to the parish, he's going to tell them, even though he's not going to attend it, we need a traditional Latin mass in our diocese. So I think that this particular episode just hit home so well, like you said, with the way things are being handled by the Holy See. It just doesn't match up with the purported threat of traditionalists.
just the threat kind of idea is just quite funny, in some sense, because it's such a small number anyways. It
Hmm.
like, to think that, it's something that existed, um 60 years ago. This isn't like something new. This isn't
Yep.
there. The Latin Mass isn't the creator of some new heresy or something like that.
Hmm.
And so it's not. in of itself a threat to the church in any capacity. Which, I mean, it'd be kind of it'd be insane to say that it itself, the a mass that has existed for probably at least 1,000 years, probably more. Uh, I don't know the like minute details
Hmm.
of when the Latin Mass like became solidified most, but I would say it was definitely at least solidified by the 50, or it was maybe not
It was very
solidified.
recognizable by the 500s, 600s at the latest.
Yes, exactly, which is very early in the church comparative to where we are now.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, and that's exactly what Pope Benedict said, is that something that has been deemed good and beneficial for so long can't all of a sudden just be evil.
I thought pointing out sort of the generational difference between like the fact that Pope Francis, when he was ordained,
Hmm.
never celebrated the traditional Latin Mass because that was not being said at the time. While
Hmm.
uh, it was really cool seeing, especially Ratzinger, as just a regular priest celebrating the Latin Mass, though it was not, it was just a photo, it wasn't like video. That would have been really cool.
Yeah.
But it seeing him youthful as well just is something special as well,
Hmm.
celebrating the Latin Mass. I don't know, what'd you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's a great point that was being made, like to the point that when the person being interviewed, he laughed like, "Yes, I know exactly when he was ordained." So that he only celebrated the Novus Ordo. I thought that was a brilliant point. But I think in general, one of the things that I don't want to get missed here is, like, not only was the cinematography really well done, the music was fantastic. Like, for being written for such, a relatively low budget production. Like, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, just factually, they aren't spending tens of millions of dollars on this movie, um, was fantastic, but also the framing of the story. I loved the parallel analogies that they had of, uh, like, the Latin Mass being not abrogated, but um, replaced by the Novus Ordo in 1969, and then slowly being opened up as they showed, like, Pope, Bishop, priest, to the mothers of the priests, where they started off in France with, like, this terrible news, and they made this big journey, like just following their journey and connecting it to the journey of the Latin Mass since the promulgation of the Novus Ordo, was a really, I think, an artful thing, especially like the two images that kind of connect for me are the last document being, or like, interview with Pope Francis, basically saying this has to be done, and then the mother actually meeting with Pope Francis saying our sons just want to be able to celebrate the traditional Latin Mass, and you're just like, eh, like,
It's also just strange, his interaction with the mother. I mean, of course, it's public, it's video. I mean, maybe he's very conscious of that, and I don't know if there was a language barrier of any kind, like
yeah.
a lack of. But I don't know if I can't remember if I assume she just spoke in French to him, but I would have assumed that if she had spoken in Spanish, it might have been a more fruitful experience. I
I,
don't know, because
and
he must know
it is.
a decent amount of French.
Yeah, and also it's common for people who grew up in Europe to know more than just their native language. So she very well may have known Spanish or Italian to be able to actually converse with him. I don't know the specifics of it.
Yeah, I can't remember what language it was. Um, it
I was
was.
just reading the subtitles.
Yeah, me too. I wasn't thinking about the language necessarily, but it
Hmm.
was quite interesting because he seemed, he was like, he's like, I know who you are. I know what you're doing. Like, what, and, basically, all genial, all,
Hmm.
with all the niceties and such, um, which makes me think and how how much of this is really at the forefront of his own knowledge. I mean, he
Hmm.
gives when he gives the speeches, I guess, or gives the homilies about rigidity and stuff like that. I get it. I can see where he's um coming from, or not coming from. I can see where his disdain
Hmm.
for traditional liturgies might come from, though
Hmm.
I'm confused because it's not like the Novus Ordo isn't rigid in like the way it's conducted. It's rigid. It has its own rigidity.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think was well posed by a few of the people that were interviewed, was just asking the question basically, has Pope Francis actually spent time with these people, or is it just what he's hearing? Because I one of the things that is true is that we don't know who it is that's whispering into his ear. He's not able to meet with everybody. We absolutely understand that. And others at times absolutely control powerful people's schedule, so it's the people that are controlling who you're meeting with control the narrative that you're hearing. So we can't, cast every aspersion on Pope Francis because we don't know every piece that he's actually getting to hear. But I agree, like, and there's been spats coming up on Twitter over the last few days of just how mean and rigid trads are versus how, rough things are for trads that go to a Novus Ordo parish. So, like, at the end of the day, one, yes, every group is going to have nasty people in it. That just cannot be avoided. But two, just because you meet one or two bad people that are giving you a bad taste in your mouth doesn't mean that, by that fruit alone, you know that there's a poison apple.
And that was best shown by the family in the beginning, where they tell the story of how they felt rejected by this one traditional Latin mass that
Mhm.
they went to in California. Which I think it's kind of funny that they were the most off-putting in California. Um, but I wonder if that's because of sort of when you're in such a kind of ugly place regarding morality and regarding like rules and stuff like that. I can only imagine that it might be that your immediate reaction is to become even more like um sort of
Defensive.
defensive or even puritanical
Hmm.
regarding um your um your reaction to people. Well, I
Yeah.
think the second place was in Missouri.
Hmm.
So the difference there is almost cultural.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that would be related to Latin mass necessarily, or is it just is it just California like manners versus Missouri manners?
Having lived in both places, that's a very distinct possibility. I am curious, have you heard of Leah Darrow? That was her former unmarried name before that interview.
No, I don't know anything about that.
So it was the wife of that couple, and she actually previously had been on like America's Next Top Model, had a crazy conversion.
Oh,
Um, Really awesome story. I heard her speak at Benedictine College and got to meet her then. But like that was back in over a decade ago, and she had just recently gotten married to. So her husband was formerly a Green Beret, so that was just kind of cool information to be able to whisper over to my wife as we were watching. But yeah, so like to have felt within myself like that slow progression that she felt of not just the conversion to Catholicism, but then the slow pull to tradition. Like I've just felt a very um, a kinship with that because I was very much on the same path during that same time frame.
so you're saying they're like the ultimate power couple?
It's kind of hard to disagree with that.
Yeah, like that just I did not know any of that. I really thought like going in or
Mhm.
seeing them, I just thought, "Oh, this is kind of like the family in the first one,
Yep.
just kind of average Joes.
Yeah, and they didn't play it up, which is why I was, whispering that to my wife as we were watching it.
Yeah, so that's kind of crazy. Yeah, so I wonder what percentage of people will notice that. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, how many people will be like me, kind of ignorant of
Yeah,
who this person is, because I guess that's sort of the difference. Like, I'm hyper aware of the like commentators that are in it. Like,
yeah,
I pretty much knew who all of those people were, but then the couple, of course, I don't know anything about them.
yeah, and that's one of the things that's kind of cool, and I understand perhaps why Mass of the Ages didn't play it up is it doesn't matter that she is was formerly really big on the Catholic speaking circuit. It's definitely cool to note, especially seeing things with Trent Horn and other big Catholic celebrities that you don't necessarily associate with traditionalism in this, but I perhaps it was just that they wanted to be able to tell her story. It didn't need that, but also they knew that she was going to be very comfortable in front of the camera and being able to eloquently present herself, which she absolutely did.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful, um, use of her story, as well as being able to tell it in in that fashion. Now, you mentioned sort of having like people like Trent Horn, and even Pat Madrid.
Hmm.
I'm trying to
Scott
think of
Hahn.
Scott Hahn. I actually think would. I mean,
He's
to
he's
majority of
slowly
people.
becoming more so.
Well, to the majority of people, to like the average Catholic, I don't think they think of him that way. But
Mm,
to more traditional Catholics, I think they would think of him that way. So
mhm,
you kind of have the dual. It's almost like dual claim, like both like right, sort of your average Catholic will claim to be or will see Scott Hahn as someone similar to themselves, and then a traditional Catholic will also see themselves in Dr. Scott Hahn as well, I think, which is
mhm.
also great. He can be the bridge um divider. He sort of, not bridge divider. What am I saying?
He's the bridge.
He is the bridge. He's bridging the divide. That's what I
Yeah,
mean.
there you go.
Like, phew. Anyways, which is why he was attacked a lot in the last year or so.
Mhm,
He's been attacked for basically being a traditionalist, which, I mean, he calls himself a glad trad,
mhm,
at least. But anyways, the point is that they are trying to make this divide. They're trying to fill and bridge the divide.
mhm,
And one of the things there is like one criticism I had with one interview, and it was
mhm.
more just this seemed unnecessary or seemed out of place. But and this isn't necessarily a problem with the person necessarily, but Tim Gordon's part in it just
Yeah,
seemed out of place. um I get that his sort of mentality is very much like sort of the hipster bro vibe kind of thing,
yeah.
but he could, like, I wish they had just said, put on a like a nicer piece of clothing for it, because otherwise, like, it just didn't seem to go with the style of everybody else.
Yeah, that's a fair point. One, I'm not sure how well he would or wouldn't have reacted to that.
Sure.
Um, and second, maybe the point in just not pushing the issue was that, you know, even if you're this kind of wannabe skater dude from Southern California, and normally you're just wearing t-shirts and jeans, that doesn't mean that you're excluded from the Latin Mass.
Maybe that's what it was trying to say,
Yeah,
but
I'm not sure.
I mean, that's something. I just thought what he said was also unnecessary. Like, it just didn't come off as necessary. So,
I did appreciate the fact that I think it could have been stated more eloquently, but going to like ask the question of what are the limits, either legally within canon law or prudentially, for how far the Holy Pontiff can go in legislating things, basically. Like that it's not something that has really, like, that there is a vast majority of consensus, that there's details that he can say that you have to wear blue to mass on X, Y, and Z date. Like it's just something that, like, the
Or you have
question
or you
should
have
at
to
least.
get vaccines.
Yeah, exactly. Like those are the types of things that those questions need to be asked. And like it hasn't really, like, we haven't had a pope that I know of that has forced the issue that much, where he's literally dictating what can be put into bulletins, or at least attempting to dictate what can be put in bulletins. Like, so
Yeah.
I agree, like he might not have been the most eloquent in how he put it, but I did appreciate that point that he was bringing up, that just we should at least ask, should or can the pope be that, minute in his detail.
I just thought the other speakers, the other interviews did that as well.
Yeah,
That
that's
led
fair.
up to him. That it just seemed like it was almost like repetitive for a
Y-
second.
yeah, that's also the only time that he appeared, so maybe that was the only thing they were really able to use, and they wanted to put him in because they used his time.
Yeah, no, it's reasonable, but also like um from what I can tell is the SSPX were interviewed and it sounded like they were kept out more or less
Yeah.
because of a narrative structure,
Hmm.
which which is where what my contention with this Tim Gordon part is, that I would contend that it sort of um broke with both the narrative structure and sort of the style of all the other interviews a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism. I will say I'm very grateful to have attended and been able to hear some of the Q&A about the SSPX, because my initial reaction when just seeing that blurb at the end was like, SSPX was unhappy with this. They decided to pull out, like that there was difficulty in the relationship there. But actually, getting to hear Cameron speak about it, it instead was that the part of the story that the SSPX wanted to um, be able to tell didn't really fit in, like you said, with the narrative structure. And it would have taken an extra, 10 to 15 minutes to just kind of put in this little branch that led to nowhere. Um, so that it was, a mutual decision, and that there'd be hope to, use that information in the future. Like it wasn't a contentious thing. So I'm really grateful that I had the chance to hear Cameron speak about that, instead of just seeing that blurb at the end and being like, oh no, SSPX didn't like this.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't take it so much as that, but I guess I wasn't as concerned about it.
Hmm.
At least that wasn't my. Uh, I guess I didn't really care. I was just like, I'm happy with the product we got,
Hmm.
and I trust these guys that whatever they do in the future may fill in the gaps that you know that that other people would like to be filled as well.
Yep,
Because
absolutely.
because these guys have done such a great job with all 3 episodes that
Hmm.
I just think they should already have our default, um, sort of support or, appreciation, and, like, the fact that people like, if people are like, I mean, when I'm criticizing, I'm only criticizing from the perspective of an honest review. I'm not really
Hmm.
trying to say, "This is a big problem." Like, I'm pretty satisfied um, with the whole thing, which I'm gonna get into a little more in a second, but what do you think about that?
No, I agree. It was more so just like as soon as I saw that, I was immediately wondering, like, why is it? Is it because they, just stated bluntly that the SSPX is in an irregular canonical status, like, and wasn't willing to go deeper into that? I one of the things I also appreciate in general about Mass of the Ages is they are trying to keep like a laser focus. They're not trying. You can get into the weeds about so much of all of this, but they're presenting with these 3 episodes a great high level view of how we've come to the current state in the church and where things stand. And they're also really focused with producing specifically items for priests and altar servers to be able to say the low mass just from watching their videos, which is absolutely a necessity, because we don't have like a priest just going through the texts alone. They're not going to be able to figure out all the specifics of how to say a low mass. Like they need help, they need guidance. So I think that they speak briefly on things that just need to be touched on, but they keep their focus where it needs to be. So like getting into the particulars of whether it's okay or not to go to an SSPX mass, that's not the point of the message that they're sending, so they don't need to get into the weeds of it. They just basically say like, things are a little bit odd here. Let's move on and actually, talk about what's important for us.
Yeah, let's focus on just sort of the main points.
Yeah.
And one of the other sort of criticisms is, from my understanding, the Lefebvre wasn't directly excommunicated by the Pope, but was considered to be sort of self-excommunicated because of his actions, which is different, different
Yeah.
kinds of excommunications. And there's a whole argument of whether or not the self-excommunication even took place because of a whole host of canon law things. But anyways, that
Mhm.
like that was sort of you know pushed aside for just he was excommunicated by the Ecclesia Dei. Um,
Mhm.
anyways, so stuff like that, and I mean, that sort of, as someone who has heard a lot about the SSPX or has tried to listen to a bunch about them, that's a sort of a somewhat of a gripe, but not a big one. That's, I mean, I'm willing to get over that. That's but also that was an opinion of, I think that was one of the interviewees, one
Mhm.
of the interviews, one of the people said that. And then, but really the best part of the whole movie, in my opinion, or the episode, was the beginning. The
Mhm.
beginning was heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Just basically watching civilization collapse around the church.
Mhm.
The church collapsing, Notre Dame on fire, all these churches being attacked and burning, and then this church which has turned into a hotel,
Yeah.
which which this person in doing the tour knows absolutely nothing about anything about it. It's just it was so heart wrenching, and seeing it in
Yeah.
a movie theater was even um, more um, what's the word? Um, Heartbreaking, just
Yeah.
emotionally taxing.
Yeah. Those first 8 minutes or so really just kick you in the gut. Like, just reminded me of when my wife, she was a missionary in Boston, and she had a priest take their team around and like it's like, okay, and that building was sold off because of this scandal, and that building was sold off because of X, Y, and Z. Just the amount of beauty that has been lost because of either sinfulness that's been allowed to flourish within the church, or intentional destruction of our Catholic culture from within. It really just, I think that kind of hammered home for my father-in-law when he was watching it. Like, there's so much that's been lost, and it's been lost because of what we have directly done.
Yeah, it's just the it was just so impactful.
Yeah.
seeing all of that, and very crushing. I mean, the beginning of the episode is so crushing, and the end is a lot is, in some sense, both sort of sad but also uplifting, because it's all
Hmm.
all focused on hope. So we have this sorrow, and then it has entered into the world, which of course it did through sin, and it is now mingled um, amongst the joys, and that's basically that's what the experience at the end felt like.
Yeah, and that's the Catholic experience, is finding hope in the midst of suffering. And I think that the movie did a really good job of that, showing, I loved the scene showing the joy of the parish in Africa, and the hope that was present there was truly beautiful. And yeah, that's what they talked about again in the Q&A session. I really appreciated is they wanted this to be a message of hope that there, uh, despite the particular struggles that we are facing with the pontificate currently, we are we have seen an explosive growth of the Latin Mass, of traditional Catholicism over especially the last 20 years, but really since the Novus Ordo, it's, slowly, the germ was there and it sprouted. And yeah, it's under attack right now, but it's grown to be a healthy tree, and it's not just going to easily be taken down. Like, there's so many people that have found the beauty there and are still continuing to. And having the specific stated goal of, Mass of the Ages moving forward, because we've had the original trilogy and there's a lot more to be said, but having their specific goal to be doubling the number of priests that know how to say a low mass over the next 10 years, like, that puts something concrete uh, towards achieving, and that kind of acts as their north star for everything moving forward, which I think is, again, just really helpful. When you have a small organization, you do have to be laser focused, and so everything that they're going to be doing is towards that end. And I can think of very few things that are more worthy of our support and, of money moving forward within the church.
Yeah, no, the you highlighted the stuff in Africa. Had you seen the video of the woman singing the credo prior to you
No,
uh
I hadn't.
no, okay, okay, so I had seen that prior, like,
Mhm,
on Twitter, because it had been shared, and you could tell that it wasn't like um wasn't on the cameras, their cameras, or anything like that,
mhm,
because it was like a smaller box.
mhm.
It was just I don't know what phone or recording device or whatever they used. But yeah, it was on there a while ago, and it was quite amazing. So I loved integrating that into
Mhm.
the documentary, because now I got to know, like, where that came from.
Yeah, for sure. And, like, I'm still trying to memorize the Credo in Latin, so the fact that she did is awesome.
I'm not even trying. I'd like to sometime, but I haven't started trying yet. So she's well ahead of both of us, which
Yep.
is quite impressive. Though their memories might be better than ours, because of technological, what's the word, like, weaknesses, because we've been over um in
Yeah,
we've over
overstimulated.
yeah, overstimulated by technology, and without the need to we can look stuff up anytime, look up stuff anytime, and we don't need to rely on our memory. And
Yep.
yeah, so it was impressive, though she might have memorized it, um when she was younger. She could have, because she was like, Max said, wasn't she like 85? I don't know if she was, but it
Mhm.
would have been around when she was young. So maybe
Yeah.
she had just memorized it when she was originally, like, growing up.
Right. Well, and how fitting though that one of the things I remember back in like 2008 was the updated translation for the Novus Ordo, where they changed how the Apostles' Creed was said and some of the other things. And like the Latin Mass doesn't have to worry about that because the universal language of the church is Latin. There used to be that, one voice through which we were all able to speak and pray together. The fact that synods are, the actual councils of the church, all the bishops would communicate in Latin because they all knew Latin. And I remember hearing about a uh, delegation that went to World Youth Day, and they were praying the Rosary, and literally everybody except for the Americans knew the Our Father in Latin, and the Americans were just looking around like, "What the heck is going on?" Like
What are we doing?
there was so much beauty in that it truly was a reversal of the curse of Babylon, which we saw in at Pentecost when everyone heard in their own voice, like they were all able to communicate together. And that was a gift that we've had that we have purposefully shunned. That is just such a travesty at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that isn't even, it's not because of a council or anything that we have done away with it. It's just because of things that have happened post.
Yep, it's a self-inflicted wound.
It's a modernization that is just a cultural revolution characterization.
Yeah, it's ultimately based around we should adapt the church to the local culture rather than we should baptize the culture and sanctify it.
It's also very sort of egalitarian to
Yeah,
bring everybody to the lowest common denominator,
yep.
which is which is our basic speech,
Hmm.
which even exists within languages too. We're taught to not um, use bigger words. We are instead using more and more slang, this kind of thing.
Yeah, it's 1984, double A plus good.
Indeed. Now, so that was extraordinarily beautiful. The whole stuff in Africa was impressive. I mean, it's hard to gauge how much of that there exists in Africa, though.
Yeah,
That's
that's a very fair question.
Yeah, and I don't know how to get that information. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, that's one of the things that like I appreciated their graphic of showing like the bishop's reaction to Traditionis Custodes of like the vast majority weren't taking actions, but the two things I will say about that were first that like very much that was like grouped in Europe and America. There wasn't much information, which I don't blame them for, but it's an America-based company. That's where not only, the vast majority of languages that they'd be able to interact with are, but also just the vast majority of people that are going to be posting things on Twitter for them to be able to find that information. Like, so I don't blame them for that, but it was very America Eurocentric. So it was hard to be able to see what the effect, how many Latin masses there are that are in Africa, that type of thing. And then I also think that because it was showing so much of the bishops that weren't taking action, it really didn't show as much like the day to day impact that has been had on those um, that are in the U.S. and Europe that have had the Latin Mass just stripped away. We have family members in the Arlington diocese where they had 21 Latin masses, and they've all it's been stripped down to just five. And yes, they're technically allowed to have it, but they're not allowed to be in parishes. So like one was moved to a Catholic school's cafeteria, that, like a bunch of people, including those that don't attend the Latin Mass, were like, this is wrong. So they gathered their resources and made a makeshift chapel out of it. Like they made it as nice as they could. But as much as I appreciate them trying to, show the hope of most bishops not taking, strong action, it a little bit downplayed the number of people that have been truly affected, that have had their parish communities stripped away, that no longer have any opportunity to attend the Latin Mass. Or if they do, it's in a vastly overcrowded cafeteria that's not even originally built to be a chapel. So that was, one of the few small criticisms I had, is I felt like kind of downplayed that bit of suffering.
Yeah, that's a good point. They also let's not forget about sort of the Mexican addition to the story as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sort of the Cristeros. I
hmm
don't actually think it was. I mean, it was definitely American centric. I don't think it was that Eurocentric, to be honest. I mean,
Well, I was saying the map specifically, like
oh,
what they were
oh,
showing.
sorry. Yes, never mind. But the movie or the episode,
Yeah.
it seemed very all over the place, in my opinion, regarding people.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think that's completely fair. I
Yeah.
was just referring to that one particular graphic.
Sorry, yeah, that makes sense. Um,
Yeah,
but
I did
but
want to ask, did you have any criticisms?
I mean, my
Oh, and Mac
criticism,
is asking what our favorite episode is.
yeah. But well, first, what do
Yeah.
you mean? Like, I mean, I had the criticism with sort of just that one moment,
hmm
that,
Yep.
and
With Tim
then
Gordon.
let me think. And again, that's not an attack on him or anything.
Yeah, it just didn't
Uh,
fit. That makes
yeah, it
sense.
just didn't feel like it fit. Oh, I think at the end, it was there was the marriage of the woman from the first movie, I think,
Yeah,
and that was
we
not played up at all, and I was confused why that seemed like sort of skipped over.
Yeah, Dan, if you're still in the chat, if you could answer for us. My wife also asked, like, is that the um, woman from the first episode? Because,
Christine.
yeah, Christine. Because if it was, that would have been a really cool thing to like. Not you don't have to play it up as a huge thing, but at least let you know, like, just tie together why she was there. Okay, so Margot's confirming, yeah, that was the same woman. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing, and I wish that they had made that, just clear. This is the same woman that we talked to for so long.
Yeah, and it's funny, I was with my mother as well, and she noticed that, and I didn't at all.
hmm
Like, uh, and,
Yeah, I had no clue.
and Mac's wife noticed it, and he didn't catch it. So not everybody noticed it,
hmm
uh, at the moment, and I just wish, it was played up just a little more.
Yeah,
Margot thinks we should have known.
I, Margot, I will just say you are a woman, and it seems to be a common thing that the women are
Yeah,
noticing and the men don't.
yeah, that's actually a good point. It does seem like it's all uh, the battle of the sexes here,
Yeah,
um, regarding noticing it. So it's quite interesting. But Mac asked, "Oh wait, let me see if I have any other real criticisms." Um, I mean, I don't think I don't think any of like the interviews like really like surprised me, but I guess
mhm.
that didn't being somebody who's so often listening to this type of thing and well knowing the arguments and stuff like that, people's perspective, I guess it makes sense that I wouldn't be surprised about it, but I guess it would have been nice to have something that really like caught my attention, I guess.
Yeah. So really quick, just for those not in the chat, Dan, who was one of the producers, yeah, he's putting it there,
And assistant
said
director.
yes, and assistant director said that it was a directing choice to kind of make it an Easter egg, go for rewatchability. He didn't want to hit us on the head, which is very Tolkienian, and I can respect that. Um, yes, Margot, we know you noticed every previous character. You don't have to rub it in. Um,
Margot's the
y-
super fan, and
yeah,
so it's not hard to or it's easy for her to catch everything. But I mean,
yeah,
I get subtlety. I understand it.
yeah,
It's just I didn't notice. So,
yeah.
uh,
I would have had no clue if it wasn't. Oh well, Dan, I recognize Jody because I know her, and my wife hangs out with her all the time, basically.
oh, I did not.
Yeah,
I don't think I did.
yeah. I
So,
went and talked to her afterwards because she was there. But the only other, I don't think this isn't a criticism. I think it's just perhaps a missed opportunity. Is I wish that the question had at least been posed, like, why is it of all of the difficulties in the church today, of all of the James Martins, of all the clown masses, of the German bishops, why is it that this is the problem that Pope Francis has honed in on and spent so much effort on eradicating? So I don't think that it's a true criticism so much as that's something that could have been asked by one or two of the people would have taken a minute or so just to like, what is it about the Latin mass that makes us such a target?
I wonder if it'd be harder to do that part just because maybe, I mean, there'd be a lot of people to interview on the outside
Hmm.
perspectives, but maybe not a lot of people that would want to talk to them for the episode with any inside perspective on that.
Right, and I don't think that they should have tried to answer it. I think they
Yeah,
should have just asked the
ask the
question.
question. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe that's a post trilogy type thing.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of opportunities in the future for sure.
okay, so what's your favorite episode?
Has to be episode 2. Um, I think the cold hard history shown in Vatican II and the facts of just the graphic of everything that was modified and everything just stripped away. Um, I think that was for me the most poignant moments of the trilogy.
Oh yeah, that I agree completely. That's my favorite. It's like the Empire Strikes Back of um
Yeah,
of the
I agree.
trilogy. I mean, it is in the correct order. I really do think episode 1 is sort of the heart. It's the most
Hmm.
like I think the third of anything is very hard to
Yeah,
um to get to be better than the first two.
I'd agree with that, but I also think that this trilogy was well thought out, and excuse me, this one I do think will hit home hardest for those who don't already attend the Latin Mass.
Okay. So, okay. Yeah, I mean it makes sense. I think heart-wise, the first one's the biggest. Second is the most hard hitting and the most sort of, in some sense, exciting because
Hmm.
because of the way they explain it, um, and just sort of it sort of smashes a narrative that has
Hmm.
existed for so long, and for
Yep.
people who probably know nothing about it's how things got to where they are.
Yeah. I don't know if there has been a poster made of it yet, but I want a poster of just showing the before and after and everything that's been scrubbed away. Because I just want to be able to, like, for my friends that don't see the big difference, they think that the Novus Ordo is just the Latin Mass translated into English. I want to be able to just point, like, it's right there. Like, this is everything that's been taken from us. Um, but no, I agree with your summation, and it is always hardest, but I do think that it was really well done with episode 3. Like, as far as concluding the trilogy, especially connecting it back to um, oh, what was her name? I don't want to Christine.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, like I think that was a really beautiful tie back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's great to see her doing well as well. I think we
Hmm.
were all invested in her story, which
Absolutely.
I think that's why almost. I mean, I appreciate the subtleness, but I almost would say that the fact that we were, we cared a lot about her story makes it a little strange that we don't get any like um real answer to her story, a real like um somewhat of a conclusion to her story.
Yeah. And that's an artistic decision, and those
It
are
is.
things that are those are prudential. But I'm glad that they did include her, even if they didn't make it glaringly obvious.
Sure. Do you want to read this?
Yeah. So Daniel just responding to my comment about it being a missed opportunity, says the movie shows and asks the question of why is the Latin Mass being persecuted in the real faces. It lets the viewers understand that from the heart level. There's too much rhetoric about the mean rad trad to like focus on that for that to land well, and I think that's a perfectly fair answer. Especially with just the rhetoric we've seen on Twitter in the last couple of days, like it's understandable that we don't want to play ourselves up as the victim. So yeah, I think that's a fair answer from Dan.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would say trad recovery is kind of doing the opposite. It's like it's
Yeah.
trad recovery is like building us up as like the evil uh man behind the curtain kind of thing. It's quite crazy, especially if someone has just joined Latin Mass within like the last 3 years or whatever.
Which it has exploded since COVID.
Yeah, so how many of them have trauma? So if even if it's for like y- you know take the most charitable outlook of the
Yep.
trad recovery, it would basically only be for people who have somehow managed to be in this in that group for a really long time,
Hmm.
which isn't a lot of people.
Yeah, and I will say, especially like when you get into like true sedevacantism, like
Oh,
not talking SSPX, but far out there, actually sedevacantist, separate chapels that have no connection to the current episcopacy. One of our priests gave a um, really good sermon on the fact that when you cut yourself off from the body of Christ, the first thing that is lost is charity. And it's like getting into, that level, I can much more understand it, but that's not the target audience from trad recovery. It's the people who have attended diocesan or FSSP Latin masses that had their feelings hurt.
yeah. Anyways, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But I just it made sense from not playing the victim, but like they're almost you know they're making us the villain. So
Yeah. And I think that again, like Dan makes a really good point that if we focus too much on playing up the victim, then it really does kind of reinforce that stereotype versus just letting it be a question in the background. I can understand that artistic decision.
well, they do like with this trad recovery thing is they make themselves look crazy.
Hmm.
Like like
Well,
have you
they
gotten
don't
this
even make
disease?
themselves look crazy. They show their craziness.
Well, okay. Well, that's what's the difference there?
Well, I'm just saying that it's exposing what is actually true, that like there's something actually wrong there. It's not just me going and, dancing around looking like a fool. It's that there actually is foolishness underneath.
Okay. Yeah. So do you have anything else sort of on that we haven't covered regarding the episode?
The only thing I would honestly just say is, and this is obviously from me, not from this channel, but I truly believe in the message, the method, and the people within Mass of the Ages. And I would highly encourage, if you have the ability to put a portion of your tithe towards supporting their message, please go and do it, because I think this is one of the most important things happening in the church today. But that's, from my perspective.
I mean, I agree. This is definitely a place, or definitely a area, or a sort of an organization that is both in need of funds and worthy of funds if you have funds to give.
Hmm.
Margot has the donation the link, latinmass.com/donate.
Hmm.
So check that out if you're interested. But Jeff, this has been wonderful time talking to you. It's always a pleasure having you on this channel. So
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Connor. Appreciate you listening to me. And just because Margot's still in the chat, I have to ask, do you know why ghosts are so lonely?
why?
They've got no body to hang out with.
Well, let's end it out on that. Thank you, Mr. Supreme Puntiff. What's your on Twitter before we go?
So it's at Jeff Catholic, or you can look up Supreme Puntiff Jeff.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, everyone. Please make sure before we go, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And God bless. Bye.